Legends! I am not Cerberus and welcome back to my channel. I would say today's video is all about Gulio Cesare, but first we do have to cover a bit of disappointment. I was going to do a full Abruzzi review and I even wrote out the whole script, trying to be objective and balanced, but after trying to do the narration, I came to realise that I was talking a lot of bollocks, and I honestly felt that I was merely trying to polish a turd. So I decided to bin the review and do a quick summary here instead before the main event. Sure, she's fast, pretty stealthy, and she handles well, but her guns are terrible. She has the fewest number of light cruiser caliber guns at her tier, a middling HE and AP performance, and long range but very slow and low damage torpedoes. I found very limited success using Sansonetti with beyond range igniter, Velocious and steer clear with refill station as a legendary skill, and Muller and Mikawa as inspirations. This at least makes the ship somewhat usable, but the AP and HE shells shatter on most things that aren't destroyers or broadside cruisers, and the torps are so that you either have to be a blithering idiot to be hit by them or point blank range to expect a hit. Honestly, this ship is awful and really not for me. Perhaps it would be somewhat more competitive with the It's Not IFHE skill, equally of power, but as it stands now, she is possibly a contender for the worst T6 ship in the game alongside Ashitaka, Charlemagne and York. It's a real shame because she is an absolute beauty, but sadly, for me at least, that is all she is. For those of you that are interested in a full ship review, I'll consider publishing what I wrote for my script at some point at a later date. If you do have 12,500 doubloons to spend, then I would recommend you either get yourself Flint or Indianapolis. You'll have so much more luck and so much more fun. Or you could use 6,250 of those doubloons and buy this magnificent specimen. I give you the Gulio Cesare, which I'll get off the bat right now, is in my opinion the best tier 4 battleship in game at the moment. And for those of you looking at the video length thinking too long didn't watch, here's a very quick summary of why you should buy her. She is fast, agile, fairly well armoured with hard hitting guns mounted in quick traversing turrets. The accuracy can be a little bit wonky at times, but this is offset by the ship's mean-worthy ability to rack up citadels on battleships and cruisers alike. If you're fed up with the slow, lumbering beasts that often populate tier 4, this ship is a must-buy regardless of whether you are a cruiser or a battleship captain. As always, before we move on to builds and playstyle, let's take a quick look at her history, while maintaining a good eye on the gameplay in the background. Named for the famed Roman emperor of the same name, Gulio Cesare was laid down on June 24th, 1910, and was completed on May 14th, 1914, entering service on June 7th the same year. She is one of 3 Conte di Cavour class battleships built for the Royal Italian Navy, the others being Conte di Cavour, obviously, and Leonardo da Vinci, and despite being completed during World War I, none of these ships actually saw any combat during that conflict. While designed to be able to achieve 22.5 knots, the ship was in fact only capable of 21.5 initially. Cesare, like her sisters, was armed with 13 305mm guns mounted in 3 triple and 2 twin turrets, with 18 120mm casemate secondaries and 14 76.2mm guns mounted on the turrets themselves. The ship took part in the Italian occupation of Corfu in 1923 before decommissioned on May 18th, 1928, but notably was not scrapped. Instead, she was used in mainly gunnery exercising. In October 1933, the ship began an extensive modernisation programme that would not be completed until October 1937. Changes included the removal of the triple turret amidships, and the remaining guns were then bored out to 320mm. An entirely new superstructure was built, and all of the boilers and turbine shafts were replaced, with a nice shiny new bow bolted onto the existing one. She was given a revised secondary armour consisting of 6 twin 120mm guns, 3 per side, with some improved anti-aircraft weaponry. Interestingly, in World of Warships, the 4 twin Skoda K10 10cm anti-aircraft guns are categorised as secondaries. Although versions of this gun were dual purpose, the particular variants installed on Cesare were AA mounts specifically. The changes to the ship increased her displacement significantly, as well as causing her existing waterline belt armour to become submerged. New boilers and turbines meant she was able to hit 27 knots with relative ease, although she was recorded to have hit 28 knots during her trials. In 1939, she covered the Italian forces during their invasion and occupation of Albania. On July 9th, 1940, the ship took part in the Battle of Calabria, where one of the most famous moments of World War II took place. Cesare and her remaining sister ship, Conte di Cavour, under the command of Admiral Inigo Campioni, engaged British battleships Malaya, Royal Sovereign, and Warspite under the command of Admiral Andrew Cunningham. Although the battle was indecisive with neither side losing any ships, HMS Warspite is attributed with scoring the joint longest range hit with her main guns on Giulio Cesare, with one of her 15-inch shells hitting and destroying one of the funnels of Cesare from 24 kilometers away, or 26,000 yards. Had Cesare's shells struck Warspite beforehand, rather than straddling, she instead would hold the record along with Scharnhorst and Montecuccoli. On the night of November 11th, 1940, Cesare was anchored in Taranto harbour, along with the rest of the Italian battleships when they were attacked by 21 Swordfish biplanes from HMS Illustrious. Although Cesare was not hit, her sister Conte di Cavour was struck and sunk, leaving Giulio to be the last of her class. Leonardo da Vinci was sunk in 1916 following a magazine explosion instantly, also at Taranto. November 27th of the same year saw Cesare take part in the Battle of Spartaventi, although to call her a participant is somewhat of a stretch as she didn't actually engage anything. In January 1941 she was damaged by splinters from bombs dropped nearby during the British air raid on Naples while she was docked there. Following repairs in Genoa, on February 8th she sailed to the Straits of Bonifacio to intercept what was thought to be a British Malta convoy. But as it turns out, it was the task force tasked with Operation Grog, a naval raid on Genoa by Force H consisting of Malaya, Brenone, Sheffield and Ark Royal. Unfortunately, Cesare had gone completely the wrong direction and entirely missed the British forces and was unable to intercept them. The ship's final sorties took place at the end of 1941 and the start of 1942, specifically during the First Battle of Sirte, where she covered the Italian convoys to Libya and engaged a small escort group for a British convoy to Malta, but no ship was sank. January 1942 saw Giulio provide distant cover for the last time, being reduced to a train stationed at Pola thereafter. Her final actions of the war took place on September 9th, 1943, where she was ordered to put down a mutiny at Taranto following the Italian surrender. En route, she was attacked by German aircraft but received only minor damage. The ship was then interred at Malta until June 1944, when she was allowed to then return to Taranto and remain there until 1948. Cesare was moved for the final time under the Italian flag on December 9th, 1948 to Augusta, Sicily. 6 days later, she was stricken from the Naval Register in preparation for handing over to the Soviet Union as war reparations. Acquired by the Soviets on February 4th, 1949 and commissioned into the Soviet Military Maritime Fleet as the battleship Novorossiysk 2 days later. The ship would serve the Soviet Union as flagship of the Black Sea Fleet for 6 years, undergoing 8 partial refits during that time, including the removal of her 37mm and 20mm AA guns, being replaced by 12 twin and 6 single 37mm Russian mounts instead. The ship's story would come to a tragic end on October 29, 1955 at 1:30 AM, 2 weeks after the 41st anniversary of her floating, when an explosion ripped through her forecastle deck, leaving a hole 14 metres by 4 metres across. Novorossiysk began to sink bow first and capsized at 4:15 AM. The ship slipped beneath the surface 18 hours later, taking with her 608 sailors in the worst naval disaster in Soviet history. Officially, the ship was sunk by an undiscovered German mine late during World War II, and indeed over the next 2 years, Soviet divers found almost 20 unexploded mines beneath the waves of Sevastopol Bay. There is some doubt from certain quarters, however, as some experts believe that the crater left by the explosion of the mine was too small for a 1200 kg TNT detonation, which is what the Soviet story is. Others think that the damage to the ship was more consistent with more than 5,000 kilograms of TNT, and given that no other ships had passed through the harbour no issue, there's some speculation as to whether there was even some mines there to start off with. These other ideas are given further credence, as in 2013, Ugo de Ospesito of the Italian Special Forces branch, and I'm going to completely butcher his pronunciation, La Decima Flotilla Mars, an officer of the, again, complete butchers, Servizio Informazione Militare, gave an interview with an unverified admission that the sinking of the ship was in fact caused by 8 commandos who were ordered by the Italian government on behalf of NATO. Personally, I'm not entirely sure who to believe, as the Soviet Union isn't exactly known for transparency, and I do think, well, what reason would this guy have to lie about that kind of thing? But I do love a good conspiracy theory, so let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. But moving on, we have to take a look for my build for the ship and her statistics, and as we only have one Italian battleship, it's an easy choice. It's Paolo di Rivel. At the time of doing the script, he is currently level 11 at Legendary 1. My skills and inspirations from are on screen now, and they consist of Brawler, Crisscross, Firefighter, Master Mechanic, and Will to Rebuild, with Andrew Cunningham and Mikhail Kedov as my inspirations. This will give you a slightly faster reload speed, even better turret reverse, 4 heals, currently 5 when maxed, reduced incoming fire chance, and of course passive healing when close to an ally at less than 20% hit points, as well as a little extra in the dispersion department too. And sure, you do bring the range down to what is frankly an awful 13.3 kilometers. Taking into combination with everything else that the ship has to offer, for me that is a very small compromise. In the singular module slot, I have aiming systems mod 1, which is in fact my go-to first slot for most of my battleships, with only a handful of exceptions. Speaking of her stats, let's take a flying look at them. Survivability wise, Cesare has a very healthy 30% torpedo damage reduction, which is second only to the 31% found on Texas at this tier. However, her hit points are on the low side with 45,500. It is the lowest of any tier 4 battleship when upgraded, with the exception of Nikolai and Bretagne. In terms of armour, she's interesting. I've heard it said by other CCs that this ship is very squishy and not very well armoured at all. And well, to some extent that is true, if you show up flat broadsides. Let me explain. So these screenshots are taken from the PC, but we have had confirmation that the arm profile is identical. So, for outright protection, she is on the low side, with only Congo having thinner overall plating, with a maximum thickness of 280mm around the gun barbettes. That said, her armour plating covers a lot of the ship, as you can see here. The very tip of the bow has 19mm, same with the upper stern. However, this armour is supplemented by 110mm and 130mm cheek armour at the front, with 85mm on the rear, with the same again for the butt cheeks. The upper belt plating beneath the superstructure is 130mm and the waterline arm is 220. In layman's terms, that makes the ship actually one of the most protected at her tier, as the armour is distributed throughout the whole ship. While you will still get battleship pens from the front, angling carefully you'll be able to reduce that to mostly all the pens and even ricochets across the cheeks. Moving on to the guns, as mentioned earlier, my build does have a truly awful range, only managing 13.3 kilometers. But if you play aggressively and keep your wits about you, this will not hold you back that much, because you'll be able to enjoy a 25.9 second reload, which will get better as you level up, as well as a 28.8 second 180 degree traverse time, which is the best in class at this tier by quite a margin. Her shells also pack quite a punch, with 4800 citadel and 35% fire chance on the HE shells, with the AP shells putting in a not too shabby 9700 damage. Something which you'll get plenty of, as this ship truly shines at punching holes and smacking the citadels over the ships. Quickly looking at her secondary guns, with aiming systems mod 1, they have a 4.2 km range and a 6 second reload on both calibers, with the 4 twin 100mm guns spitting out 1500 damage, 6% fire chance HE shells, and the 6 twin 120mm guns dealing 2000 citadel hit damage with AP. Another area where this ship shines is mobility. Now, while she isn't the best in any particular category, she has such a competitive set of stats across all three that for my mind she's the best in class. With the common battle booster mounted, I have this ship at 27.8 knots, which is faster than all other battleships at the tier except for Congo. Her 640mm turning radius isn't as good as New York, Kunish or Bretagne, but it is better than everything else, and she's substantially quicker than those three ships. And the same story goes for her other ship. 13 seconds isn't as good as Nikolai, Piotr or Bretagne again, but she has a faster top speed than all those three ships and has a better turning circle than the two Russians. Acceleration and deceleration is also pretty decent as well. All in all, she is extremely competitive, and the sacrifice in outright armour thickness pays huge dividends towards excellent all-round mobility and excellent all-round armour coverage. Her concealment is only beaten by the Nikolai I, and is tied with Piotr with 12.7 detection by sea, 10.6 by air, and 10.5 km smoke firing penalty. In terms of consumables, she's unspectacular with the Bogo standard 15 second duration, 80 second reload damage control party, and 28 second duration, 80 second repair party, recovering 0.5% of your hit points per second with 3 charges. My current setup does change those numbers slightly. I have 10.5 second action time and 76 second cooldown of the damage control party, and my repair party does do 0.66% of hit points per second for 22.4 and a 75.2 second reload with 4 charges. As you level up will to rebuild, that duration will decrease, but the rate of recovery will dramatically increase, so you don't need to worry too much about that. Still with me? Good. Now onto the home straight, gameplay. I've said a few times already that this ship is not a ranged monster, which means you do need to close the distance, but be careful not to get too close. To get the most out of her, you need to keep moving around and actively manoeuvring to ricochet incoming rounds. Remember, directly bow tanking at this T is only useful against AP firing cruisers with the exception of Graf Spee. Graf Spee and all battleships you face will be able to punch straight through your bow plating head on and the upper section of your rear plating, so angling and zigzagging your movements when facing heavy guns is key to your survival. Your speed and agility can easily catch enemy on the back foot, and coupled with the exceptional touch reverse, you're a foe to be reckoned with and can comfortably take on multiple ships as long as you keep your eye on the ball. The patch note review for October will feature a solo warrior game from one of my good mates, Menacing Coyote, so keep an eye on that for when it comes out. Initially, what you'll want to do is use your guns to bit slap anything that dares show you broadside with your AP shells, whether that's cruisers or battleships. And while the gun caliber of 320mm is the second lowest of the tier, you have excellent penetration and good velocity, if somewhat temperamental accuracy. But with 10 guns, it is very much a case of flinging enough shit at the wall and some of it will eventually stick. As always, if you spot a destroyer, clear the shells you have before switching to HE, as some damage is better than no damage at all. Same with coming across any tier 5 battleships, aim for the superstructure with AP and then switch to HE if they're bow 1 because you won't be able to overmatch their armour. In my time with the ship, she's easily my most consistent 100k damage dealing battleship this side of Nelson, and I'm regularly able to rack up more settled hits than any other battleship I've played. Although that could be in part due to the players at the tier, but for my money she's very reliable. For the love of pizza though, don't present flat broadside to a battleship unless the enemy is just fired. While the plating is reasonable when angled, you have an above the waterline system and the armour itself amidships is not angled at all, and it is rather thin. So if you're sure broadside stuff like this happens, and that's what I get for being too feared of the weak Königsberg, hiding behind the island and taking my eye off the ball. Anyway, I think I've covered everything. It is 3:38 in the morning at the time I wrote this sentence, so my brain has kind of turned to mush. But hey, that's another review done. Woohoo! Although the end review is still pending. It is becoming a bit of a running joke this now, but I will get around to doing it eventually, I promise. Unfortunately, there isn't going to be a Rome review, because I'm a bit of a muppet and I accidentally deleted the gameplay footage and wasn't able to recover it. So there's going to be no video review on that ship, sadly, at least not until she returns as a free XP ship Sunday, whenever that'll be. But yes, all that's left for me to say now is thank you all ever so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a big thumbs up below and click on that subscribe button, as it does help the channel greatly with the algorithms and stuff. So yeah, take care, bye for now, and I'll catch you next time.